Welcome to the Adoptee Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Melissa Guida-Richards, an author, adoptee, and mom. Each week, we will delve into the nuances of adoption, as well as tips for how to bring up difficult discussions in your adoptive family. And most importantly, we will not shy away from tough topics. So thanks for joining me today, and let's jump into your weekly dose of Adoptee Thoughts. Hi, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Annie, aka I used to be Sam, and I was adopted in the late 80s. I am of Puerto Rican descent and grew up in Boston with a white family.
Can you tell me and the listeners a little bit more about your adoption story?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I was adopted in the late 80s in Boston through Catholic Charities, which I am told at the time was like a big adoption agency. I also have a brother who's adopted, who's also of Puerto Rican descent, but we're from different biological families. So it was the two of us. It's kind of a weird family constellation, but I also have a half sister who's my adopted father's biological child, who's 10 years younger than me as well. I grew up with a spunky Irish woman in Boston for the most part. I always knew that I was adopted. It's also extremely clear when you have a family of Dolans, and then my brother and myself. It's not something that could ever be hid, So it was always clear that we were adopted, but I don't think it was necessarily the most welcomed subject in the house, if I can say that. So not like don't talk about it, but more like. I read a lot of books. Everybody always puts their birth parents on a pedestal, like you're probably doing that too. Don't get pregnant. That was kind of like how I would say that's kind of how the majority of the adoption conversations happened.
I feel like back then a lot of things were just hush hush. Like it's just like for people I knew, like even just about race, it's just like, oh, it's there, but let's not acknowledge it.
Absolutely. I also think, now there's language that didn't exist back then. There's, adoptees advocating for themselves. There's people like you creating space for us, which is amazing. And I think back then, like what the like liberal mindset was, we don't see color and all these other super problematic, ways of moving through the world. A little bit of white savior complex, the huge.
Yes, I do know. I think it's amazing. Like you mentioned, like more people are talking about adoption, especially adoptees. And I feel like just the mass movement now from all of us is just slowly picking up energy as we go. And so we're all creating all these different types of projects. We're working together and it's creating this like beautiful thing where we're able to sit down and have conversations like this that we weren't able to have with our parents. And I just think it's beautiful because then sometimes our parents can listen in and then can be encouraged to take that step with us. Which brings me to a project that you are working on currently. So Can you please share that with us? Because we don't want to know all of the details.
Sure. Yes, thank you. So I am a singer and a composer. I've been working under the name Annie Goodchild for the last like 10, 15 years or something. And I like reached certain levels of success. I enjoyed doing that. I still like play gigs under the name Annie Goodchild here in Switzerland, where I live, even though I'm from the East Coast of the States. It's a different story. And I was feeling, I think probably like a lot of people and a lot of adoptees, a lot of transracial adoptees, super ungrounded and almost kind of like a sense of being a fraud, or I wasn't. I felt like I didn't know how to create truly authentically because I think I just didn't have that foundation. And I was going to all these writing sessions, which is where a singer or songwriter goes to a studio. They walk in, a total stranger is a producer, usually a white man, because the music industry / every industry. And you have to go and just create a song like from nothing in one afternoon or one day. And I was on like day 5 in a row of these sessions, and I was feeling really depleted and really drained and really like not seen and not heard. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. This isn't, it's not healthy, you know? And so I walked into my final session, and the producer was a queer woman of color. And I was like, oh, thank God. And I think because I was so like physically tired, some walls that are normally up weren't up. And I started talking to her about my recent experience taking an ancestry DNA test. And which was when those videos started coming out on YouTube of like, I was like, oh my God, this could maybe be a thing. I don't know. So I had ended up taking a ancestry DNA test, and it was like a year later. I was checking kind of, every month or so. And then there was a first cousin match, which was insane. It still doesn't quite feel real. This was maybe like 2 years ago now. Was it? I don't know. I'm not. Whatever the timeline was. Sorry, this is a really roundabout way to tell you about this project.
No problem. We love to hear the details. I always love hearing adoption stories, and I found family through 23andMe, so I'm always interested in this.
Okay. And so it was a nephew on my birth mother's side of the family, and he talked to his sister, my cousin, and she kind of had all of this information. They all knew about me. And there was this whole backstory about how my birth mother and her sister, their mother, were pregnant like within days of each other. And they were going to give birth within days of each other. And my birth mother eventually wanted to give me up for adoption. And it became like a huge rift in the family, basically, because they're like, keep the baby in the family, we'll raise her, So they all knew I was this like cousin that was maybe going to be raised as their sister. And I mean, I knew I was like, what? What? I thought probably nobody knew about me. And so they reached out to her, and it turns out she's married to, from the information I've gathered, a racist Republican prison guard, which is like my worst nightmare. Like, whoa, that's just what a bundle. And there was a re-rejection with very aggressive wording and a threat of violence if I ever showed up on a doorstep or like contacted their kids, my half siblings. So I was telling her about this the producer about the re-rejection of my birth mother, it felt like, and it was still really new at the time. And how it really fucked me up, and in kind of waves and in ways that I didn't expect, and it would come up at times I wouldn't expect, different things would be triggering. And I looked up, and the producer was just like crying her eyes out. And it was just really like, oh, wow, this is my story. I cannot be a fraud in this, because this is my life. It's my experience. And this was really like an aha moment for me. And the name, I used to be Sam. Sam was my birth name. Kind of just clicked and came to me. And I was like, this is the music I need to be making. These are the stories I need to be telling. And like, if I could take the transracial adoption experience, this non-relationship with my birth mother, and like put it into sound through my sound, what is it going to be? And that's how I started writing these songs and making this EP.
That's beautiful. And I know you shared a little bit with me before, and I was just like blown away, because I'm like, wow, one, you're so talented, and two, it's just, I feel like something like this hasn't quite been done before, because I've seen like art exhibits, but I haven't really seen like music videos. There's like YouTube videos of people talking, having conversations, or social experiments, but nothing in like a music video type of way. What are some challenges that you found by creating this project?
I think so. I also have never heard of. If they're out there, people let us know. I want to consume. But I had also never heard of any sort of musical project in relation to adoption before. And so I think part of the challenge is there's nothing to like draw from or learn from or educate myself with. So I'm kind of, grasping at air a little bit. So that's been a challenge. Another challenge has been just like the emotional process of this. I've written, like vulnerable love songs before and talked about other traumas and things in my life, but I have never, I not only have I never written songs about adoption, it never occurred to me to write songs about adoption before, which I find is bizarre. But I think it was that like emotional block that was there. I wasn't capable of it until now. And so, the triggers that come up, I'm having to navigate my own emotions in a different way, and also be able to remove myself enough to like productively create this body of work. So that's been a really interesting balance for me.
I know exactly what you mean. Right now I'm working on my memoir, and I've worked, I already wrote my book on adoption, what white parents should know about transracial adoption. And that was just like intense because I did a lot of research, and then just seeing all these statistics and all the history and the ins and outs of everything. It's just like, wow, all this stuff happened, but nobody's talking about it. And then now, like digging into my memoir, I'm just like, you have to get to that headspace, and where there are a lot of like trauma that we've had to deal with, and just putting that out there for other people. You don't know how people are going to react, and generally, the way adoptees are received is not always pleasant, and that can be a hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you close with your adoptive parents at all?
I think probably, as it is for a lot of people, that's a complicated question. I think they would say yes, and I don't want to say no. They loved me. It was always verbalized that I was loved and wanted by them. So I also feel like I'm very new at navigating the guilt I feel about acknowledging these traumas happened. You made mistakes, whether the material wasn't available to you or not.
Yes.
These things happen versus me trying to protect their feelings. So I feel really, really, really green.
Yes.
In that. So am I close to them? No. But I'm not close to them. It's like, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
I love them. I love them. They love me. I live an ocean away.
Yeah, relationships are complicated. And I think you bring up like a good point that a lot of adoptees have to face right now, especially as a lot of us are coming of age, and like new material is getting out there, so we can have the vocabulary to express these things with our families. And some of us can, some of us can't, and some of us just choose not to, and that's fine. But I think just acknowledging that and hearing someone else say that can help loads of people figure out where they are, because it took a long time for me to be comfortable talking about adoption with my parents. And
I was going to ask you about that anyways. I'm just curious, when you like started writing and publishing, what were those talks like? How did that go?
I'm going to say that my road with my parents has not been easy. A lot of anger, a lot of depression, and it was from both sides. Like, my parents struggled, I struggled, and looking back now after many years, I can be like, oh, I can get why they did that. They weren't educated. And then like adoption agencies, even now, there's little to no follow-up with adoptive families, and that's a big problem. But I could talk about that for hours. But anyway, so with my parents, I took a long time to myself. I was in college at the time. I was able to take space because we were like 8 hours away from each other. And I needed lots of counseling, as you can imagine, after something like that happens. And then I had my first child. Now it's 5 years ago. That feels like forever now. And at that time, it brought up a lot of emotions about being an adoptee that, like, I knew it was going to be a little weird because, like, thinking about my birth mother and how she had me and then placed me for adoption. but going through it was so different, and it was just so personal. And I just found myself like trying to understand my adoptive mother a lot more, because I could see like the need in me for wanting a baby, for wanting a child with my blood and who looked like me. Like that was such a big factor too. And I could understand why my mother really, really wanted a baby. And just that time having my kids, it allowed my parents back into my life a lot more, and just seeing how much they've changed from when I was a kid to just how they treated my own children. I just saw something there that I felt was worth saving. And so I felt like I had to do more healing just for me. So I just started as a blog writer, and then slowly dipped my toes in the water about sharing my story. And the first time I really told it raw, like I wrote for a HuffPo piece about finding out I was adopted, and I knew I had to be not unbiased, because obviously it's my story, but I didn't want to make my parents come out as a villain. I just wanted to tell it honestly, because everybody has their reasons and it's very complicated. And so the way I kind of dealt with like the feelings of guilt was I sent the piece to my mother before it was published, so she would have time to accept it, read it, cry, yell, whatever she needed to do, and we can discuss it, because those feelings were super important to me. And just having those words down on a page, just it was freeing, because I was like, there's no more secrets, there's no more lies, we're not going to do that anymore. And from then on, anytime I write something super personal about my adoption life, I always send it to my mother first, if it includes her. And I feel like just having that openness, even if she can't accept it 100%, the fact that she's willing to read it and learn and see my perspective has helped kind of bridge that gap within us. And my dad, like you mentioned, your mother's biological mother's connection. My dad was a diehard Republican, and talking about race or anything like that was just like hitting a brick wall. So in my family, with him, I just had to kind of come to terms that there were limitations to that side. And while I love my father, there were some deeply problematic prejudices that he had. And there just comes a time, I feel like, in every transracial adoptee's life where like we can choose to address these things, or we can choose to live with certain things up to a certain point and have boundaries. And that's a hard choice for any of us to make. And that's where we were at. And then unfortunately my father passed away passed in September. But thank you. But just being able to talk and having these resources, I was able to show them other adoptees videos and stuff. It just, it helped. It did help. Even though my father didn't completely understand, the fact that he was willing to listen some of the time, that did make a difference.
That sending that first draft or the first article, the HuffPost piece, to your mom, that must have been a huge moment for you. I would imagine. I haven't, wow, I would have been terrified. I have not played any of the music that's already completed for my adoptive parents, but I think I've always been really like private in that way. Like the things that I created were mine, and that was really precious to me. And I think I have a hard time sharing that with them. So the knowledge that my adoptive parents have now is that I'm working on a new project under a different name, and it's all about like my adoption and the journey as it's still evolving. So that'll be an interesting day when I'm
I can imagine, because like it's hard to choose what you want to share and what you don't, and especially being so vulnerable is difficult.
I don't know if I'm great at it, if I'm being honest. I'm like, in general, I'm a Pisces. I'm a pretty, yay, water signs. Okay. So I'm a pretty out there, kind of go with my flow kind of person. So I don't think I have like any like rituals or things that I always do, but music really grounds me. Expressing my
I
life
have
and
Pisces
channeling it through
too.
sound is my like therapy, you know? As I'm sure writing is for you, and everybody has their own like vices, right? Um, so it really helps me to put on music I like when I'm like back at the house with my family, to just kind of like fill in the gap. And there's usually always music playing in my house in one way or another. And I try to allow, especially with this project, when things unexpectedly come up, just to be gentle with myself and allow myself to just kind of like settle back in. And that's a daily reminder. Be like, okay, be
Yes,
gentle
yes.
with yourself.
I'm always like telling myself,
Yeah,
like, oh, have grace.
yeah,
Like, you're just human. Just take it day by day. Are
yeah,
you able to talk about the project with
yeah.
your friends and family that are in your life over there in Switzerland? Do you share more with them, or are you still just keeping things? Okay.
I definitely share more. Yeah, yeah, I definitely share. I like, for me, chosen family has always been a huge thing for me, and I've always had like a handful of people that
Yeah.
were like my ride or die. And they absolutely have been here as well. A lot of my friends here are other people of color, other queer people of color, other singers, and they've been super supportive. And for most of the people I've told, like the new project, it's I used to be Sam, when I'm letting them know these things. Well, when I'm telling them about the project, they all had like a physical reaction to it. They're like, "Yeah, this is it, Annie. Like this is what you should be doing now."
Mm,
So it's been really, really wonderful. I'm super thankful to have that here.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think a support network is so, so important, and just being able to share that with other people who kind of get it. And growing up, were you in a diverse area, or did you have to like find that as you're older?
well, I was like in Boston, or almost Boston. Literally, like the end of my street is Boston. So I technically was not in Boston, but I was so close that it wasn't even
Yeah.
like a suburb. Um, uh, no, there was a big Jewish community
Hmm.
where I grew up, and then there's the like random white parents that had adopted kids, usually of color. So there was like a small, very small group of us, and we're like, hey, we're okay, cool. Um, but growing up, my brother and I both navigated toward the Black community and the like Latinx community of like people. We found people that looked like us for the most part, because that wasn't
Yeah.
reflected in our homes, and there was no effort on my adoptive parents' parts to like try to immerse me in any way in our
Hmm.
community. So I think we like subconsciously were giving
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
ourselves.
I think that's so
Yeah,
important. Like when I went off to college, and then like now as an adult, like I definitely make it a priority. I just feel like it's easier to be understood. Growing up, I had a lot of white friends, and like their experiences never quite matched mine, and it was just like always this
yep,
weird unspoken thing. And um, I have a lot of friends who are people of color in the adoption community, and just having people get what it's like is just, it just feels like relief. It's just like, oh, I don't have to explain how it's a thing. They get it. They've lived it. They see me. I see
yeah,
them, and
yeah.
it's beautiful. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Even my friends' mothers. So I my adoptive mother cut my hair off for the first like years of my life for me, because it was too hard to handle. And I remember I would like end up, when I did get to grow my hair out, I mean, we're like fought to grow
yeah,
my hair out, um, I would have no idea how to take care of it. And I remember we would just like put on movies, and my mom would just like dump not correct conditioner into my hair and just like try to
yank,
get the
yeah,
dreads out, basically like just like a unidread in the back of my head. And so I remember like going to friends' houses, and they'd be like, what are you doing with this? And so my friends' moms would do my hair. Like my brother, who's a lot darker than me, would get really ashy. He didn't know to put on
yeah,
lotion, or when to put on lotion. So like our our friends, communities are the people that like helped us take care of our bodies, you know?
I feel like that's beautiful in its own way, because it's you have that experience and you have someone helping you out. I remember like my mom, when I was in like elementary school, she would just slick it back in the tightest ponytail possible, because like I don't have super curly hair, but I have like wavy curly hair. So like I'd have this knot in the back of my head all the time, and she didn't know what to do with it.
Yes.
So I was just in this like ponytail, and I get headaches all the time. And I feel like people don't understand, white people don't understand how important hair is in our culture, just being Latinas, and just our appearances are a big part of our lives. And I've been trying to learn how to do curly hair for the past like year and a half, and like sometimes I get it right, and other times it's just like giant frizz ball.
Yes. My hair dried really weird, a little small today, and you know, but it's a surprise. It's a surprise every day.
Yeah, exactly, every day. Yeah, my hair's still wet, so we'll see. I put a bunch of gel in it, but yeah. So back to the project, what are you looking for in terms of including other adoptees in it?
Yeah. So as I was making this project, it like occurred to me, oh, maybe there's other like projects on adoption. Why don't I like check out social media? And I feel like embarrassed that it took me so long, but that's when I discovered your Instagram page. That's when I discovered a lot of other I Am Adopted, like a lot of other pages and projects that are out there of people sharing their stories. And it was so impactful for me to know how many of us are out there, and how many of like everybody has their own stories and experiences, but also the like themes that go through so many of our stories. It's like heartbreaking and uplifting that people are reaching out to each other now.
Yeah.
It's like really moving to me. And so I was thinking, I was like, I'm so new to this and new to creating this, that the small little piece of platform I can like add, I want to be highlighting other TRAs and their experiences and their stories. And so after all the music was done for the first EP, new songs are being written now. I was like, I need a visual aspect to this project. I think by seeing other people's stories and their faces, you start to really understand how many of us are there. And I wanted us to be seen. I wanted us to be heard. Our stories are not heard. My adoptive mother is very much an intellectual and read every like 80s, 90s book on adoption written by white authors who like,
Yeah.
Not very useful.
No.
Yeah. And so we need to be advocating for ourselves. We need to be helping each other. We need to be sharing what we have. I might not have much, but what I have is this little platform. And so I want to add this visual aspect to my project, where kind of throughout the music, or with each song that's released, I want kind of a collage of people's stories that they want to share, or what they wish people would know, or really what they want to share and how they want to share it, because it's our turn, you know?
Yeah.
And so right now I'm reaching out to people like I reached out to you. And I'm asking if they want to be seen or heard in this way and with me. And if not, like, I support you. I'm sending love. And if yes, yes. But, and so at the end of this, when all the songs are released, we're going to have about a 25, 30-minute kind of musical documentary of everybody's stories, as an educational tool, and for me, and hopefully others, as a tool of like healing and kind of just reaffirming this community a little bit.
That sounds really beautiful and just powerful, and I can just like picture it now. I feel like music reaches almost everybody. Like, who doesn't like music? And then just it can evoke so many different emotions, and I feel like just including a bunch of diverse people's stories, it will just make it even more powerful. So if you are an adoptee listening, a transracial adoptee, which again means you're a person of color adopted by white parents, if you want to join in on this project, how do we contact you? How do we get in on this?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media at goodchild.annie at Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. And also I used to be Sam at gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out. I'm also in the next week going to be putting up some other flyers and kind of easier ways to get in touch. But I would love to hear from you.
Yes, and I have a post on my Instagram. So as you guys know, I'm adoptee _ thoughts. On Instagram, I have a little bit about her information, the project, and her email written. If you didn't catch that, I'll put it in the show notes for you guys as well. And I'll probably be sharing more about it because I am super stoked about this project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything else about this that you want to let us know?
I think I feel very much that I'm at the beginning stages of this. So there's going to be more music for sure. And I'm really hoping that at some point this project snowballs till we get to a point where people can just like put in their stories on the website. And but yeah, I want to be making some noise, and I want to be making it with this community. So
yes, yeah. That sounds so cool. It's just like an online scrapbook of adoptees, and wow. So for people who aren't familiar with your singing and your work as a musical artist, what kind of music are you doing?
Yeah, that's a weirdly hard question. I have a warm, soulful voice, although I do not make soul music. I think people usually want to hear genres, but I would say in the last 5 years or so in the musical community, there's been a big pushback of genres are literally made for marketing companies so they know how to make money off of this music. So I pull in from a lot of different genres. I think there's a kind of like a soulful folk foundation to what I'm doing, but I have very cinematic and electronic production over that music. So if that tickles your fancy, check it out.
Yeah. How did you break into the music community?
It's such a random story. So I was about to be graduating from high school, and I had not planned on going to college, at least not then. I did one semester at Berklee College of Music, so hey-o. And I was at this kind of like end of the year party, and I met this girl, Amanda, and I was like, hey, I'm Annie. What are you doing in life? As one in high school does with no cares in the world. And she was like, I'm going to go to college. I wanted to go to Guatemala because I have some family there, but nobody would go with me. And I was like, I'll go with you. Like, yeah, let's go to Guatemala. And at the time I was listening to a lot of Pink Floyd and Queen with Amanda. Yeah. It comes in later, I swear. So we ended up, I think like 5 weeks later, hopping on a plane. And we went to Antigua, Guatemala, which is a magical place. Absolutely, yeah. I fell in love with it immediately. And we were there. It was our first night walking around. Amanda did not know that I sang. I was too scared to sing in front of anybody. Like my hairbrushes knew, and that's it.
Gosh! And look where you're at now.
Like, yeah, I've been really petrified. You know, like the thought of it, I was like, oh, you know. And so we were there, and we were walking around, and we realized the streets are kind of blending into one another. It's getting dark. We were specifically told, don't be two females walking around alone at night. And we're like, oh, uh-oh, where do we go? And then legitimately in the distance, we heard Pink Floyd playing, and we were like, follow the Floyd, man. Like whoever's listening to it can't be that bad. I do not recommend this. Young listeners, don't follow in these footsteps.
Oh, God.
And so we walked into this bar called Cafe No Sé, which means cafe, I don't know. And it was a very international, like locals and international people, like it was a tequila mezcal bar. Mm-hmm. They have their own mezcal brand now. It's called Illegal. Check it out. It's delicious. And there was an open mic playing there. There was an open mic like happening at this little cafe. And my friend, who, let's say, was a big smoker, not drinker, we had a few drinks because we were of age in Guatemala at the time. And okay, so they were passing the guitar around, like, who's going to play next? And my friend's like, she will. And everybody like was like, do it, until I was like, and I like went up to the bar stool and like stared at the floor and played a 3-chord Tracy Chapman song. Like, I mean, I thought I sounded awful, just like, and the bar was totally silent. And I was like, oh my God, this is the worst. And then afterwards, everybody cheered really loudly. And the owner of the bar, John, hey, John, came up and was like, hey, do you want like a weekly gig here? Ooh. And I was like, okay. And that really, like Guatemala really like birthed my music career. And within that week, I found a weird chick named Felix from the UK who played the singing saw and double bass. Okay. And I met a Dutch man named Martin, who I ended up being in a band with, who played guitar. And we started doing these sets. And then a bunch of other places in Antigua asked us to play. And we were playing like 4 or 5 gigs a week for almost 4 months, nice. Which was really like, I just got kind of pushed into the scene real hard. Yeah. And then I was hooked. I was in love, and I haven't stopped since.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. I like hearing stories of how people like got into what they do, especially since like, I don't know, I just find it interesting what adoptees like careers. Like my friend, she like works at a hospital. Another friend, she's a writer, and then we have a nurse, and it's just like all these different things that people can do, and how sometimes we just fall into them, and yet it could be so healing too. Like, look how far you've gotten, and that's just so cool. I feel like a lot of us can sometimes feel lost at times as adoptees. I know you touched upon it before, like our identity. Have you been able to process it more or be more comfortable with your identity? Because I know for me, for example, I had a hard time like coming to terms and being able just to say I'm Latina. It took a while because like I just didn't grow up even like knowing or understanding, and then I felt like I didn't really have much knowledge of the culture at all, other than what I've seen on TV and like heard stereotypes from people around me, and it just felt like a weird place to be in because I was like too white to be accepted as Latina, and then not white enough to still not be profiled and stuff when I went in stores. And so it was just like this weird way. And then just like being Latina in general, like, you know, there could be white Latinas, there could be whatever. I'm multiracial, and it's just like there's that whole complexity too that I couldn't even touch yet for years, and it took like a lot of work, a lot of integrating myself into the culture. So have you been able to like reclaim your identity or come?
Yeah, so that's a hard question. I should also specify my birth father is Puerto Rican. I've actually found him, and he's been amazing. And I got to meet my half siblings on that side. I just got to meet my grandparents. My birth grandfather just passed away. But I feel so blessed that I got to meet him 2 Christmases ago, which that was really big for me. Like, wow, I came from these people, you know? And on my birth mother's side, she's like Greek, Southern Italian, Middle Eastern, and Albanian, or, you know, that part of the world. And growing up, I mean, I had so many identity issues, but I had a very small little folder with no medical history, no.
I know.
But like some really small facts, and it said that like my grandparents from my birth father's side were from Puerto Rico, and so I like clung on to that so hard because I was like, this is all I have, you know. So and I knew that my brother was also Puerto Rican, so I think we kind of tried to create you know, but we grasped at what we could. So I always identified that way. And everybody who speaks Spanish always immediately spoke Spanish to me. And I was like,
Yep.
oh God, that was, yeah, I would say I'm really racially ambiguous. Like, my skin tone changes a lot depending on the season. My hair changes different textures depending on where I'm hormonally at, you know? Yeah. And so identity was always a really big thing for me. And everybody always thought I was one of them. Maybe you experience this too, but growing up, I think the number one thing people said to me was, what are you? What are you?
Yeah.
What are you?
Yeah.
I would be rich. I would be rich.
I think I got Indian a lot. I definitely got like Hispanic, but they couldn't figure out like which type.
Yeah.
And it was like this game that people would play, and it just be so awkward because I'm just like, I am Italian Portuguese, and then meanwhile,
Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine. Oh, I really cannot imagine not knowing until I was 19. That's just, that's like overwhelming to think about. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I know it's horrible to say, but like my mom says this because I feel like this is a way for her to cope, but she's always like, well, if it didn't happen, would you be where you are at today? And I'm just like, well, I don't know if I want to put it that way, but like I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Are you trying to help out? But
Yeah.
I feel like there can be a lot of beauty that comes from trauma and our struggles.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, adoptees have a lot of experience dealing with difficulties. But I do like to see what can come out of it and how we can heal.
Yeah.
And how we can help each other heal by just bringing what we have to the table and just being vulnerable. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And again, if you guys are interested, because I know a lot of you find power in sharing your stories, please reach out to Annie. Again, I'll put her contact information in the show notes, or you can just go to my Instagram or her Instagram. It's going to be an awesome project. I can just feel it. And you don't want to miss being part of it. Are there any last things that you want to let us know? Or I usually end by asking if you have any advice for adoptees or for adopted parents. Whatever you want to
do. Maybe I can hop on a couple of those if that's all right. For adoptive parents or people considering it, whatever you think you have to do, there is more. Educate yourselves. Do not educate yourselves by white authors. Educate yourself with people within the adoptive community, within the transracial adoptive community, and from people of color from your prospective children's communities. Know how to do your kids' hair. Know how to take care of their bodies.
Yes.
You know, other traumas were there anyways, but that would have helped a lot. It would have helped a lot. To adoptees who've waited as long as I have to reach out and be part of this community, reach out to this community. You don't have to, as you said earlier, explain yourself, you know, unless you want to. Unless you want to. And what else I want to say is just thank you to this insanely resilient community of people. Thank you. I've got chills. Really, it means the world to me that you're out there and that you're sharing your stories and have helped me be able to share mine. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for coming with us today. And maybe we can touch base later once you're further along in the project and we can share more information to our followers. Again, thank you for having us.
I'm so glad that you joined me today. And if you would like to hear more from Adoptee Thoughts, make sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like to learn more about me, you can check out my website, adopteethoughts.com. I'm so glad that you joined me today. And if you would like to hear more from Adoptee Thoughts, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.